specific modules of like a web application do you think that for two good web program or good programmers like need to do pair programming for?
Well, actually, the areas where I think pair programming is most advantageous is wherever you have APIs. So say for instance, you're working on something that's right at the interface between, I don't know, the browser and the server code. It can be very advantageous there because then individuals can go back and work on things on either side of the API individually afterwards. But making sure that there's good communication at those API points is actually one of the most powerful places where you can use pair programming.
Just a while ago you mentioned that Java has some features which can help you in scaling out and managing teams, stuff like that. So, I mean, what exactly are those features? Could you tell a bit more?
Well, so, the reason that I'm focusing on Java and GUIT, GWT, is and JUnit is basically that it's the first time I feel that you can build a complete application, a complete sort of rich web app with all of the kind of nice Ajax type features that people are starting to expect, and write it in a single language. With GUIT you can write it in Java, and the compiler takes care of turning that Java into JavaScript. So all of a sudden you sort of half the number of different repositories you need to manage. You don't have to have a separation of testing suites for client versus server code. It becomes easier to migrate code from the client to the server. Imagine if you discover that there's a piece of code that just runs too slow on the browser, and you say, well, I need to move this into the server. If you're writing the client code in Java, then you're able to much more easily migrate that stuff back to the server, and just redefine your API for passing information back and forth. So, I felt that was a big advantage for Java in the current environment. And then the other big advantage that I see is that in the mobile space, the Android platform is basically a Java platform. So if you want to get out and start coding for any mobile web platform, or you have an advantage in using Java there. And again, you will find yourself more able to manage the maintenance of your code in a single environment as opposed to multiple environments. So you reduce the amount of specialization you need at the engineering level. So it enables you potentially to start as a single programmer and build the whole thing out.
Doesn't the .NET framework provide that capability?
Well, not for the mobile platform, really. I mean, there is Windows Mobile, but it's a very different mobile platform. I don't know. Microsoft might solve that in the next year. But at any rate, yeah, like I said, I coded a lot in .NET. I never felt that the Ajax integration with .NET was very convenient, and it certainly didn't make testing convenient. So that's where my hesitation comes in. Cool. So let's see. Beyond scaling out teams and individuals, I put this slide up very briefly on Tuesday, and I'd like to spend just a little bit more time on it because, we've thought about how teams scale, but not about how the technologies might scale as your service grows. And I think that, these are some ideas that I think are really most useful right now if you want to start experimenting with scaling out, with building a service that can grow as the users grow. And so maybe I'll actually go from from the bottom up because I'm more interested in the bottom. But definitely, one of the things I've seen with the use of memcached is that if it gets tacked on at the end of a development process, the caches that are built end up being pretty piecemeal, and they cache basically some bits of data as you need it. And one of the things that I thought I should mention is that if you have a very basic data model, you can cache everything. And you can actually cache it in such a way that you're caching the query results that you're getting from the database, as well as individual object updates that are coming from the client side, and manage them all as one sort of uniform layer. But and I haven't seen this described very much, but the idea that you can basically catch all of the updates that are coming in from the client and capture also all of the query results that are coming from the database in the same space means that you're going to have a lot fewer consistency issues in the cache as the data updates. So so basically, at some level, that cache can represent 90% of the accesses to the system, because you're just doing such a good job of keeping the freshest stuff in that cache.
How do you figure out what stuff should be in the cache?
Well, frequency of access and frequency and recent access
But,
tends
how do you
to.
actually do that?
Well, with a cache like memcached, you can just you can sort of keep track of recent access and you can add counters very easily. Mm-hmm.
So you said you really want to cache the most frequent whatever things you use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can you decide what's used most frequently when you start designing it, as opposed to when it's in development or when it's
Sure. That is an interesting question. It definitely helps if you've experienced data access in a previous project or in some other environment that you've worked in to come up with an initial model. But basically, what I would say that you want to sort of plan ahead for in data access is that you're going to basically want to design your pages to return lists of things. So effectively, most every Facebook page at some level is a list of things, and one or more. But so basically, you design your queries to sort of respond to, find me all the friends of X, or find all of the posts by my friends, or things like that. Those are all query types that would return a prioritized list that you can post on a page.
Generally, how long do you want to keep things in cache?
Well, actually, there's a trend right now to think of the cache as being the primary data store, and so as long as possible, and if you can make your cache bigger, by all means do it. Obviously, you need to make sure that there's a mechanism to keep your cache consistent. But that trend is real, and there's research papers coming out that are suggesting to sort of think of your disks as just for persistence, just for backup in essence.